Hello and welcome back to the Punchers Chant podcast, and welcome to the review show where we have a look back at everything that happened over the weekend in boxing this weekend. That is Anto Cacace versus Leigh Wood in Nottingham, and the rest of that card, as well as a dodgy punch decision and lots of news. As always, it's boxing. First of all, if you could subscribe to the channel or follow us on Spotify from the audio versions, 2 podcasts every week, straight into the action. Anto Cacace, he's pretty good, isn't he?
He's done it again. I think that's the way to look at it.
3 for 3 for him now on big shows in the twilight of his career, let's say.
Yeah, what a run he's been on, and it continued on Saturday night. I thought, this fight was going to be very close. I honestly thought Leigh Wood had a chance in it, but I think from the opening bell, I thought, this is going to be one-way traffic. Leigh Wood will be lucky to even get a round, which he did get on my scorecard.
But a puncher like Leigh Wood always has a shot. He never...
True.
A lot of his performances have been in when you're actually watching them, you're like, oh, is he going to get beaten here? And then he eventually gets to stop it and you go, oh no.
I think that's what was on my mind was watching it. You're thinking, you're going back to that Conlon fight, you're like, well, Leigh Wood was way behind in that fight, needing the stoppage winning. It's in the back of your mind, you know that Leigh Wood can pull it out if needed. But yeah, like you said, Anthony Cacace, another brilliant performance. And you go back to that night in Riyadh against Joe Cordina where, for me personally, he caused a massive upset that night. Not being biased, being Welsh, but I honestly didn't give him a shot against Joe Cordina. And then against Warrington was incredible, I thought, that night in Wembley. And yeah, to go to someone's backyard and put in a performance like that, you got to take your hat off to him because it's brilliant. And Carl Frampton said something interesting on commentary and all that. He said that now it's time for him to go back to Belfast, somewhere where he deserves to fight. And you looked at the crowd there, he's a superstar in Northern Ireland, and it's good to see. And for Leigh Wood now, well, I don't know what happens with him, but for Anthony Cacace, he can move on to bigger and better things, like we always say. And I'm on the hype train at the moment.
Do you feel like there's a sense with Cacace, though, even though the last 3 wins have been impressive, and not to take anything away from him, has he caught these 3 people at the right time? Because you had
to a degree, yeah.
Joe Cordina, that was his last fight of that weight class. Really felt the weight cut. Warrington at the end of his career. Leigh Wood off 2 years of inactivity. So it's 3 good wins, but I also feel this catching him at the right time has played his part for Cacace. But I suppose you can only beat what's put in front of you, and he's holding that IBO belt now. Looks like Frank Warren wants to take him back to Belfast, like you said, or they could travel to the United States, because he said he wants, well, the thing he's interested in is money fights, so I suppose you're not going to get a better payday than if you are travelling to America to take on a world champion.
Yeah, well, it's the Oshaki Foster fight is what they're talking about a lot, isn't it? And we could talk about that and what that looks like and where that could be in a bit, but, sort of on the performance, I thought it was a weird one because I thought Leigh Wood's jab to start off with looked solid, and I thought, that might cause Cacace a bit of problems. But then that right hand over the top of the jab, he just had so much success. He was leading with the right hand, he was finding the overhand right, he was finding all sorts of clever shots. And then Leigh Wood just became a bit shy with his right hand. And I think that's what won Cacace the fight, the fact that Leigh Wood became shy with his biggest weapon.
Do you think that was ring rust, lack of activity?
I think
as the fight went on,
inactivity definitely played a part. I think it was the right decision from Ben Davison to pull him out. Definitely, it was only going to get worse for him. I swear there's something with the 9th round in fights. Just seems to be that round all the time.
That's where everyone seems to peak, ain't it? Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to say entirely down to ring rust, though, with that. I think Anthony Cacace, what he did, when you watched it as a fight, you could tell that you're watching a high-level, world title-level fight with 2 high-level, world title-level fighters, because just everything about it was high quality. The footwork, and I think to suggest that it was just the fact that Leigh Wood's not at his best is probably harsh on Cacace. The guy's 36 himself. He's not exactly a spring chicken. He himself should be, in theory, falling to the same things that Leigh Wood is. So the same things that we're discounting Leigh Wood for, we're not giving Anto Cacace the kind of leeway that he deserves. And ultimately, I thought it was just, he looked bigger, stronger, faster, and a better boxer. He beat him in every facet. There was no single thing that I thought, Leigh Wood's edging that. And without that big shot, without finding that big shot that he's seemed to find over and over again, he fell short on this one.
Yeah, so it's a strange one with Cacace, because it feels like he's now hitting his peak. Even at 36, it feels like where other fighters would have, like, for example, Leigh Wood maybe 2 or 3 years ago hit that peak. He's sort of, this where his upward trajectory's sort of come from. It'll be interesting to see how long that lasts, but if it, like, he probably hasn't got loads of years left, so another couple of big fights, like I said, that O'Shaggy Foster fight is probably the one they're going to push for, and there's no doubt that Cacace's going to be confident and will be willing, I think, to either have it in Belfast or more than likely go to America and challenge for it. But he's looked very impressive all 3 fights. You can't take anything away from him. Like I said earlier, you can only beat what's put in front of you, but at the same time, those 3 fighters have all held world titles and have been there and done it. So it is 3 very impressive wins for him, and hopefully we get to see him have another crack at one of the other world titles next. So
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know the worst thing though about that fight?
What's that?
We can just about see it on there. Steve Gray.
Yeah. Do you know what?
77-75 Leigh Wood.
Yeah.
What is he doing? Come
It's
on.
a bad card, but it wouldn't have mattered.
Come
The
on.
other 2 had it right in the end, at least, anyway.
True.
If it had gone the distance.
But-
But it's annoying. It's stupid.
Yeah. He's a world class referee, we'll put it like that.
Yeah.
And he's scoring a fight like that. And that's where you go back to the point of referees should be, held accountable. Us as, interviewers, we should be going up to a referee, oh, why did you score that way after a fight? We should be allowed to do that for them to say, oh, well, Leigh Wood was doing this better than Cacace. I thought Leigh Wood's footwork was better in this round and all that. But, yeah, it's something with Steve Gray. It's not the first time we talked about him being a bad judge on this
No, it's not.
podcast.
It's definitely not.
I feel like we talk about him every other month, it seems like.
Yeah.
But at least that didn't impact the outcome of the fight.
it's a never-ending conversation on it, because
Literally.
boxing is so subjective. Like, he would, I would have guessed, had his opinion on why he scored the fight that way, even though most people would argue against it. But at the end of the day, he's the one sat there making that decision. So
it's a hard sort of thing to say, but I do think that is ludicrous. Cacace won the vast majority of those rounds, but fair play. To move off of Cacace and to Leigh Wood for a bit. First and foremost, the atmosphere in that Nottingham arena
Incredible.
was brilliant,
Yeah.
and I was thinking to myself, why Leigh Wood has become that sort of enigmatic figure of Nottingham, sort of followed Carl Froch, and I think it's because nights like this, he isn't invincible. There was never the sense he was invincible. We watched him get dropped multiple times in his career, but he always seemed to come back from it, and he had has a real buzz around him because of that. That, like you say, that Conlon fight, taking a big shot, and then
Was that in Nottingham or was that in Belfast?
I don't think it was in Nottingham, but what I mean is the sense of he's had 3 losses in his career. He's not unbeatable by any means, but when he did it, he had this sort of comeback and the magic of the late finishes and things like this. That Josh Warrington fight, he was losing rounds in that fight, and then just
Came from, yeah.
like
I
a flick
thought-
of a switch knocked him clean out.
I thought he was behind on the scorecards in that Warrington fight.
Yeah,
but
same.
we spoke about it the other week, didn't we, when those fights in New York, for example, you can have big stars in boxing who are entertaining outside of the ring, but if they can't produce what fans want to watch inside the ring, it's just that struggle to get behind them. And with someone like Leigh Wood, like we said all fight week, even though we've jinxed a lot of fights over the last few weeks, we've said this one can't disappoint, and it didn't, because of the type of fighter that Leigh Wood is. You just know he's always going to be in a war, whether that's to the detriment of him, but in terms of you watching it, either you sat there in that arena on Saturday night or you sat watching at home, you'll be thinking, I'd love to go and watch him again, or the next time he's on TV, I'll be sitting down to watch him, because it's the type of fight you want to watch. Like, you can be a classy, slick fighter, but personally for me anyway, I don't know if it's different for you boys, I would always prefer watching a fight like that compared to the fight we had with Devin Haney a few weeks ago.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
might
And like you say, we said it and we were confident in the fact it wasn't. The only way that fight was going to ever disappoint was going to be an early stoppage, and that in itself is exciting. But yeah, I think, like you say, it's why the sort of the very best of the best, the likes of, you know, the Usyks, the Betabievs, the Inoues, they are brilliant boxers at what they do, but they're always in exciting fights.
Yeah.
And that's the magic. And you know, Devin Haney is great if you're looking for an alternative to sleeping pills, but otherwise it's not worth watching. Whereas this one, in Britain, it's what makes British boxing so great. It's fights like this, really.
And that card on Saturday night I thought was a really good card. Top to bottom, you know, Sam Noakes, brilliant performance. One of your favourite fighters.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was a tune-up fight, wasn't it?
It was.
Really? But he showed that he is...
But how many times have we seen a tune-up fight go wrong and people go, oh, why have you gone 8 rounds with that guy? For him to get the stoppage is like, yeah, okay, Sam Noakes.
Yeah, dropped him in the first and then beat him in the third.
Get him back on the main card. Owen Cooper, very happy for him. You know, coming off that fight against Cacace last year, it lives long in the memory for just 2 incredible knockdowns, and that obviously didn't go in his favour that night. But to come up against someone like Chris Congo, who obviously beat Florian Marku, who was a lot of people's like up and coming fighter here in the UK, to go the distance with him, quite a close fight, I thought. But yeah, Owen Cooper, great performance. And then the light heavyweight division. I don't know what it is about the light heavyweight division in British boxing, but we've got a lot of depth in that. And yeah, Ezra Taylor showed that he's levels above Troy Jones. I like the build up to that fight. They were friends and it was going back and forth at the press conference and all that, and it's good to see. But yeah, that was another great fight. And then Liam Davies, a new weight. So that was probably, out of the main card, Liam Davies probably at the bottom as performance, because I wanted more from him.
Yeah, we were sort of saying this before. Obviously now up at featherweight, and I think he does look fine at featherweight. He doesn't look out of place. He doesn't look, you know, light or small or anything like this. But I thought, for a man who we and a lot of people have had talks about, you know, fighting for big world titles, fighting at the very top. Yeah, the Inoue fight was in the talks for a while. It wasn't a world champ performance, was it? And maybe it's just what he needed to get, you know, the monkey off his back off that loss against an unbeaten fighter. Let's not give Kurt Walker any discredit just because he's not a huge name. But like you said, I maybe just expected a little bit more from Liam Davies than I got.
With the Shabazz Massoud fight, did we all go Liam Davies in that fight?
I think we did.
I think so, yeah.
So that was like an upset for us then. And yeah, like you said, to come back and go 12 solid rounds, let's call it. It was close though, 116, 112, 115, 113. So, you know, around here and there.
Very tidy fighter though, so to come and, like you said, coming off the back of that first loss is always tricky for fighters. Some fighter, it's almost a sink or swim moment, isn't it? Yeah. Like, that could be where, if he lost again on Saturday, you're really looking then, like, where's he going from you? But yeah, maybe it's taking time to adjust to that new weight, obviously against an unbeaten fighter, so it's not going to be easy. But I'm keen to see where he goes next now, Liam Davies. Like you said, looking in a way, I don't think that's anytime soon.
No. Well, not to mention it's the wrong weight class now,
obviously. Obviously a different weight class, but I don't know.
What I don't know is who the IBF champ is up at featherweight, off the top of my head. I'm sure once we have a look... Oh, Angelo Leo, isn't it?
He's busy though, isn't he?
Angelo Leo's got a big fight next, and like you say, is a tough fight. Every time I see Angelo Leo or think of Angelo Leo, I just think of that one big shot knockout he got in his last fight. The lead hook, which is a punch I've got a bit of a soft spot for. But yeah, like, do you think we're being maybe a little bit harsh on Liam Davies? But I think I expected a world champ performance, and I got just subpar, but only a little bit.
I think it's good though, because we have obviously high expectations of him, because we know how good he can be, and to have a performance like that, you sat there thinking, oh come on, like we're talking highly of you. We want to see more, and yeah, you got through that, and like Ben said, Kurt Walker is no mug. He is a tough fighter, and to get through him in your first, like, in a way, you're like restarting again, because you're coming off
reset,
yeah. But yeah, a decent performance, but that was probably the 36 minutes of the fight night that I was probably thinking, I could have watched the highlights of.
What British fighters are around him now in this new weight class?
I don't know, because
fighting now?
Featherweight, it's difficult because a lot of them have moved up, obviously. You know, the likes of Josh Warrington, Leigh Wood, etc., moved up to featherweight. So in terms of, you obviously got Nick Bull right at the top of the division.
He's going to be busy, ain't he?
And then he's the next one up, and you're looking at Nathaniel Collins is a quality fighter. Lee McGregor, who's fighting as well very soon.
Well, Lee McGregor was meant to...
Doesn't feel like a massively stacked weight class.
No, it doesn't. Like I say, a lot of the sort of top end of that division very recently moved up to super featherweight in terms of domestically. So there's an opportunity there for him, and it's the kind of fight, the kind of performance that if in 2 or 3 fights' time he goes on and has a big fight and wins a big fight, that'll get forgotten about. No one will ever pay attention to Liam Davis-Kurt Walker being a close fight. But like you say, the marking criteria that we've given him is perhaps slightly harsher than the one we gave of Owen Cooper versus Chris Congo, for example. But yeah, interested to see what he's got coming up. Obviously, Ezra Taylor versus Troy Jones. You sort of brushed over that one a little bit.
I thought it was a great fight.
It was a great fight to watch. Troy Jones was a tough bugger. He showed he's tough. Ezra Taylor probably just a little bit too good for him. And then now, obviously, the expectation is it's that Louis Edmondson fight, which is a good fight. Ezra Taylor's going to, you'd imagine, stick it on Louis Edmondson a bit, and we all know what Louis Edmondson's about. He's not going to take too many steps forward, but he is a very good boxer, and he makes it awkward for a hell of a lot of people.
Louis Edmondson signed. Is he still signed to boxer?
He's with Queensberry.
He's with
His
Queensberry.
last fight
So
was
they both.
against Tosin, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I think you mentioned that the possibility of that maybe happening on the Wembley card with Usyk Debar, obviously, that we're still sort of.
It was quite funny. Within the first round of that fight, Adam Smith mentioned it on commentary. Like, Ezra Taylor's got this coming up, and you when that first round ended, you sat there thinking, hang on a minute, is Ezra Taylor perhaps overlooking Troy Jones here? Because Troy Jones was really, really tough, and I think he can take a lot away from that fight as well, because I want to say that's his first defeat of his career.
Yeah.
So
2 undefeated fighters.
Yeah, so you can take a lot away from it, and he can come back, and that's something that, like I said about this light heavyweight division in Britain, it's so stacked. There's so many fights that if you lose that fight, well, you can fight this guy just below you, but and then if you win this fight, you can surpass the other guy. And the light heavyweight division here in Britain is incredible, and I think it's one of the stacked divisions in world boxing at the moment. Obviously ignore Beterbiev and Bivol, they're in a league of their own, but below that, there's so many competitive fights.
I think that's why it's so good. Is it's like it's almost like with traffic, is that concertina effect, because Beterbiev and Bivol are fighting each other. The rest of the division sort of stagnated a little bit, and so they're really compressing up to each other in terms of ability, and no one's been able to prove themselves as being sort of unequivocally better than one another because they haven't had the big fights. And so it's this sort of, we've got so many people just about on the edge waiting to burst into that world scene, but because Beterbiev and Bivol are, like you say, just that cut above, you don't get to see them yet.
You had another one announced yesterday as well with Callum Smith and Anthony Yard, which is going to be in August, which I think is going to be on a 5v5 card, if I'm not mistaken.
Ooh. Yeah, and that's a good fight. I mean, Anthony Yard is such a strange fighter, and you look at his record, it's either really impressive performances against the best of the best, really underwhelming performances against some pretty bottom of the barrel opponents, and then 3 fights with Lyndon Arthur. And it's like, where is he at as a fighter? It's so hard to
And Callum Smith as well, probably could argue probably 3rd, maybe 4th best in our division.
Yeah,
in the world.
based off of who he's beaten.
Third.
Yeah.
Well, I would have liked to have seen Callum Smith and Benavidez, but
It doesn't work
not.
with the rankings, does it? Because
Yeah,
they don't have the right rankings with the right governing bodies. But like you say, I'd say, probably 4th best behind Benavidez. He's probably having beaten Boatsi, he kind of proved that he is the next guy up, the next one on the list. And that's the kind of fight, whoever wins that, you imagine will probably get, a shot at a title next, depending on what happens with the two big boys at the top. But yeah, lots of great stuff to happen.
Do you chuck Troy Jones in with someone like Ben Whittaker?
He's of the level,
Yeah.
you certainly would say so, yeah. He's of the level where it would be a good test for Ben Whittaker, and enough of an incentive that I think Troy Jones would be feeling like he could do a job, and he's going to get paid handsomely to do so. So you'd imagine, why not? I don't have any qualms with that. And while we're talking of Queensberry versus boxer, obviously Owen Cooper, Chris Congo, like you mentioned. Chris Congo is still with boxer, isn't he? I might have made that up. I might be not.
I don't know.
Sure.
But he was. And like you say, that was a good fight. Owen Cooper, the better of the two, but not by a million miles.
No, it was really close. I thought it was a toss of a coin for the decision, but no,
I didn't think it was a toss. I thought it was a little bit wider than that. It was 96-94. I think I had it slightly closer to
the
Cooper
referee
than that,
was scoring that then.
Yeah, isn't it? There's only one.
Fair enough.
I assume that was unofficial. I don't know. But yeah, it was a good fight. But we've got plenty more to talk about.
There's a lot
to start it
that
off
was
with.
That was the night of not a lot of
Finally
controversial.
got a predictions win this week as
I
well.
could get away with that.
Top
No,
10. Top 10. Well done, Ben. Well done.
Yeah.
Hold it.
Do you know what?
Hold
It's
it.
cool.
If Cooper had got a stoppage, I would have finished first.
Yeah, you're like Leicester City. You.
But if Chris Congo got the win, I would have finished in the top 10.
Yeah.
So
And
am I then? Am I like a Leeds? Am I like a Leeds United?
If Ezra Taylor,
yeah.
if Ezra Taylor had got the stoppage, then I'd have beaten Ben. So
You should have seen
it
him
was,
mind.
We're all one
when I
result
told
away.
him Cacace won by knockout. Yes, I won. Have it, boys.
I knew
Like
my
that.
prediction. I mean, to be fair, we all called that, really, didn't we, with the Cacace fight, in terms of that Cacace was going to be the better of the two.
stoppage.
I went points.
We
Just
both said that
because,
Leigh Wood is a
yeah.
bit chinny, and Anto Cacace has some serious power, so that's a recipe for disaster. But on the other hand, Emmanuel Navarette, Charlie Suarez ended via a technical decision due to a cut in the 8th round.
He got away with
Deemed
one.
to be caused by a headbutt, but certain footage has suggested it might not be. Are you guys both on the punch side of it?
But when you watch the highlight,
Definitely caught it clean.
at the first looking at it, you can maybe look at it and think, oh. But then when you look at the replays, you're like, it's a punch all day long.
Yeah,
You know,
they basically said that the ref called it a
but in the moment,
headbutt in the
yeah.
moment, and then afterwards they couldn't find conclusive evidence to suggest otherwise, and so, or in the short period of time they've got. For me, it falls under the category of, like VAR, I would certainly rather see dodgy decisions or wrong decisions like this, where you go, look, the ref had half a second to make a decision based off what he saw, and he got it wrong, but that's fine, and you can kind of live and move on with it, rather than trying to be like, oh, well, actually, if you look at the replay for 30 minutes, you can tell. You know, it's like the Usyk Dubois thing, isn't it? Like, I'm sick of the conversation. Stop bringing it up.
With some fights recently, they have been using sort of like a VAR
There's a
system.
is it
in there.
California?
Yeah,
They use it.
that's what this was for. They
Yeah.
did have that in place.
But they didn't.
But they couldn't find the conclusive evidence quick enough. And rather than leaving two people stood in the ring waiting for ages,
Yeah.
they have to go with the referee's decision. So, from my point of view, on that basis, right decision made, because the ref did what he could.
Yeah.
But Charlie Suarez will feel hard done by that.
I think it'll get overturned on. It'll probably go to a no contest and it'll be ordered to rematch. But I think Navarrete might have got away with one.
Yeah,
it was a
little
good
bit.
fight, mind. And like you said, Suarez could maybe be thinking, oh, I wasn't scoring it, but if I was going to pick a winner after the 7 rounds box, I would have
What
gone
was
Suarez. by
It was
one.
tight at the time, certainly.
What's the scorecard?
So Navarrete was tight. It was 77-76, 78-75, 77-76.
Yeah.
So a round and 2 round.
I would have had it
and a
the other
draw
way round for Suarez.
It was a tight fight, and that's why this is a conversation. If Navarrete was walking away with it, then it's
Yeah.
not even a point. But he wasn't. So yeah, interesting. Do you think you want to bring in that kind of assistant referee equivalent VAR?
If it's anything like football, mind,
yeah,
get rid of
TMO
it.
review, or do you think?
Get rid of it.
Because personally, for me, if I am comparing it to football, it's like how boxing should be is like it is in the Championship, where you go, do you know what? There was no way that goal was offside, but I can live with it because it's human error. Whereas what you get with video assistance is you get human error powered by video that's supposed to fix the problem, and it just doesn't.
But can you imagine
That's
though,
so much
with
more
like
frustrating.
VAR and TMO in football and rugby, how long it takes them to make
exactly.
a decision? They could be
You
standing
don't
there.
want to kill
But
the sport.
imagine you get knocked down in the round and it's by either a punch or a headbutt, and you're there so like, oh,
Yeah.
you haven't got your legs back. By the time the referee has a look and checks and calls it,
Goes over to the corner.
yeah, gets the TV into the ring. and all.
One second.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was a punch. That is a knockdown. And by that point,
You're
they're
back, you've got your legs
recovered.
back
Yeah.
under you,
Yeah,
and
you don't want
you're
that,
ready
yeah.
to go again. You're fresh.
For me, part of what makes boxing so great is it is a little bit rough around the edges. You know, it has all the hallmarks of a sport that was created in the late 1800s illegally in, these venues that were put on, and the police would shut them down half the time, and it still has a little element of that kind of magic, in the way that a lot of sports have lost that kind of, they've lost connection to what they once were.
Yeah.
It's become this real high level, and boxing's going that way, but it still has hallmarks of it, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, like you said, bringing it back to like football, like the champ. I prefer watching the Championship to the Premier League, just for like VAR does
It's
kill
like-
it, and you don't want ruin in boxing. Like you said, if you got 2 fighters and something controversial like this happens, and then they've got them stood there for ages, it just kills the
Yeah.
whole thing. Isn't it? So
For me, the Premier League is like is this.
Yeah.
It's fights in America between 2 world champions I personally have no real interest in, but are big names. And then British boxing is like the Championship. It's a bit rawer. It's much more entertaining. You get, anyone can beat anyone on any one day, and that's exciting. And I want to keep it that way.
Yeah, and they can run it back, can't they? Like, they're gonna probably get the rematch unless Navarette thinks, you know what.
It's going to take time for that cut to heal, though, so he's probably looking at the back end.
Yeah. But it's a different kind of sport, isn't it? It's like with football, you've got that thing where you can have, even though it does take a while, you can have a look at it. And,
this you can't. It happens. What happens. Sometimes it's crazy. Sometimes it's irritating. But always it's fun, and I think that's the
it creates talking points for everyone, don't it?
It gives us a job.
Exactly.
It keeps us in a studio.
Exactly.
To move on from that, talk about things that give us things to talk about. The fall off from us when we're talking about Jake Paul is crazy. We've switched up big time because
we're his number one fans now.
Fair play to him once again. What they are doing for women's boxing off the back of announcing the signing of Chantal Cameron and Savannah Marshall. They won a purse bid for Savannah Marshall on a world title fight
on that Netflix
before, which I imagine will go on that card. But if not, they've won the purse bids for that fight. And then Chantal Cameron now gives MVP 4 out of the top 10 pound for pound females in testing my knowledge here. Dina Thorsland, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano, Chantal Cameron, and there's one more whose name hasn't... Alicia Baumgartner. So those are the 4 they've got. These are 4 big names in the divisions, 4 of the best. And, fair play, really.
Fair play to MVP. They found a gap in boxing. I think you can maybe a way in to make them big. And women's boxing at the moment, for me, is really, really interesting. There's so many good fights that can happen, and what MVP's doing, giving out contracts to fighters like Ramla Ali, like Elizabeth Ashoba, that may not even have been given a chance over here in the UK, to now have the opportunity to have them on a card, on the undercard of Serrano, Taylor Free and Madison Square Gardens is brilliant. And to bring on people like Cameron and Marshall, like, fair play to Jake Paul. Like, we talked a lot in the past about, is he good for boxing? What he's doing with MVP is very good for boxing. And as much as it pains for me to say it, I'm a big fan of Jake Paul for doing it now. I think, apart from him fighting Chavez Jr. in a couple of weeks' time, I don't particularly agree with that. But what he's doing for women's boxing is great. And you can't say anything bad about it now for him, because he's done... When you look at Taylor Serrano, the hype he built around that was incredible. And the 2 girls of, Serrano has literally made herself a millionaire off that fight and all. And it's just great to see. And women's boxing deserves it, because so many times there's been a lot of talks about, women's boxing 10 2-minute rounds. Jake Paul's gone to Amanda Serrano. What do you want? Do you want 12 threes or do you want 10 twos? And she's gone 12 threes. Jake Paul goes, there you go. You can have it. Or MVP goes, because I don't know how it works.
We're giving him a lot of credit here, where there are lots of people in charge. But I think for me, what they're doing is likened to what Turkey's done for boxing, is what they're doing for women's boxing. They are bankrolling it to a degree that no one else was willing to do. And albeit they might not be making money on it, they're forcing through fights and forcing through deals and creating a buzz. And let's be real, if it's on Netflix, people will tune in because it's free, pretty much free, because almost everyone has a Netflix or has access to a Netflix account to watch it. And if you're scrolling through Netflix, like with the Jake Paul Mike Tyson thing, you saw it there, you couldn't avoid it everywhere. If you're seeing every time that there's this huge fight, Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor, even if you don't know the 2 fighters, if you're constantly being told it's a huge fight, which it is, you're going to believe that. And eventually people will click it, and then they'll see the likes of Elizabeth Ashoba, a brilliant fighter, knock somebody out. They'll see the likes of Ramla Ali and see that she's an activist and a model, and you think, oh well, she's brilliant, and it will have a trickle down effect on the rest of the female divisions. It just will. I think it's going to offer consistency as well. We've seen over many years now where they've had periods in the spotlight. Like in 2019, they had that all-female card with Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall, but then you had to wait, 6 or 7 years before you had the next one, and dotted in between that then is Katie Taylor fighting. And I don't want to just see all-female cards all the time, because you're sort of putting them into that box. You're separating it rather than it just being called boxing. Yeah, you don't want it to be, this is female boxing, this is male boxing, they are moments.
you just want to see consistency where these big fights are ending up on big cards, because we've seen so many, like Taylor Serrano last year with a brilliant fight, Michaela Mayer, Sandy Ryan,
Both
in
of them,
two
yeah.
really good fights. So there's no reason why fights like that can't go on cards that we see every weekend. It's just about giving them a consistent platform, I think, and credit to MVP. I think they are the best out there at the moment for giving female fighters that platform.
Yeah, and I think we are seeing it. We're seeing the trickle-down effect. You know, you've got the likes of GBM putting on, you know, Terry Harper main eventing in Doncaster Stadium, you know, the likes of Tyson Gallagher and Ebony Jones fighting. And, you know, I think what it represents for smaller promotions is the chance to get a world title fight, the chance to get a Commonwealth title fight, because let's be real, the purses are cheaper, and still create that hype around it. And I think it, you know, in time, it goes back to when we spoke to Richie Garner, promoter down in Wales. This was ages ago for the first ever female Welsh title fight, and he said, boxing as a sport, the skill gap between male and female is probably as small as any sport anywhere in the world. The physical gap is astronomical, obviously, and because it's a pure combat sport, that's shown tenfold. But ability-wise and skill-wise, the likes of Sky Nicholson, the likes of you know, Fran Hennessy coming through, and the likes of TMA Ayton, who's just signed for Matchroom as well. These fighters that are coming through are phenomenally skilled. Yeah. And it's only a matter of time before we see them at the very top. Now, as we sort of teeter towards the area of the time-wise that we tend to cool off, we're going to do a rare thing where we give credit to another podcast. Stephen Bartlett, it's Diary of a CEO. Small little podcast, so give them shows support.
So are they smaller than our one?
Well, smaller than him. But the interview he's done with Chris Eubank Jr. is a brilliant listen, so do check it out if you're a boxing fan. If you've got this far in and you're not a boxing fan, then
what are
you doing here?
So your priorities are.
This is a boxing podcast if you hadn't figured that out by now. But it's a great interview, and there was a few little interesting talking points from it. He spent a couple days in hospital with dehydration. That it wasn't a broken jaw. His face was swollen because the skin kind of swells with dehydration to try to hold on to the last little bit of moisture he's got. And yet there is a rematch in the contract which isn't negotiable. There is a rematch happening. And that is pretty much guaranteed to be the next fight. However that looks, he'll be paid handsomely for it again, but it looks like we're getting it another time.
It's not needed though, is it? It just isn't. Like, we're going to see it because of the amount of money involved, and there will be interest around it because I think it'll probably sell more than what it did the first time around because the fight was so good. But when you see the condition he was in afterwards, and like he said, his experiences after the fight, like, why do you want to go through that again?
Yeah. Do you know what the benefit is, though? We're going to finally get that image of presenter in the middle at a press conference, Eubank Jr., Eubank Senior, Conor Benn, Nigel Benn. That image is going to finally exist.
I think that's the
press
best
conference is going to be
incredible.
Brilliant.
Yes,
it was,
absolutely.
Like we said, that for me is still the best moment of the year when he steps out of that car. Absolutely incredible.
I don't think a moment will top it.
No, let's say
an 8-second knockout from Daniel Dubois on Alexander Usyk in the first round probably won't top.
I think everyone smiled and started clapping when they saw that and was thinking, oh my God.
And how beautiful it was that he was on the right side of the car as the door opened for everything.
Yeah.
It all lined up and it all... And as you find out in the interview, his dad contacted him at 8 p.m. the day before.
Did you see what he was wearing at the hotel? Like the suit that he had on, like to cover up and being disguised in a way. And I do like what he said though. What do you want from me?
Yeah.
And you know, Chris Eubank Jr. has probably already made that switch to fight mode, and he's probably thinking, "You just being here is enough."
He said he money. He assumed his dad wanted money, and then his dad went nothing. I'm your dad. I just want to be here for you, and that's where we are. And hopefully, just from a human point of view, those two are back together and getting on and talking and whatnot. But
he made an incredible clip though, didn't he, Chris Eubank Senior, with the Ras Safari and all that.
Look him up. Yeah, look him. Yeah, that whole thing.
The man's an icon.
He's a walking meme. And he's the best.
What you can't believe is the bloke used to be one of the hardest men in Britain.
I think he probably still is.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to mess with him. No.
He has a very soft exterior, but I would not want to get on the wrong side of him.
But that, like I said, that's the moment of the year, and that definitely, when you were watching it, and like I said, when we reviewed the fight, I felt like we were going into that podcast of going, but just imagine if Senior was there.
And we're going to get to see it.
And we're going to see it again. And yeah, like you said, that press conference where the build-up needs to happen again, when they have to sell another 600 to 1 million pay-per-view buys. Yeah, it's going to be good. And the only concern is, you touched on it with the dehydration and all that, 160, I don't think. Chris Eubank Jr., I think he's past that now. And
You need to make sure you're safe.
yeah.
It's the rehydration is the problem, but what he also has a better understanding of what it looks like now.
But the British Boxing Board of Control aren't going to be happy with him, though, because he's used the sauna to...
He didn't use a sauna or he hasn't personally admitted to using a sauna.
He said in the video.
He said he used a heated blanket. He said he
But
didn't use a sauna.
do you know the sweatsuit that he had on?
Yeah.
He took that off and went into the sauna now. So, and
Yeah.
in fight week though, and that's where everyone was like, "Ooh."
He did, but they can't prove it. They can't prove there's no footage of him in a sauna. I don't think the British Boxing Board of Control are that
But they don't like people
able
doing
is
it.
the word
Yeah.
I'd use, probably. I think they'll make a hash of it, whatever it is. And plus they've got, what, $1.1 million of his money in their back pockets now. So
And
I'm sure they can do
That's hopefully going to a charity, which we all.
wow, yeah,
we hope
it won't be. But
Robert Smith.
you know, never mind.
Be going on a Christmas party.
Yeah, big Christmas party. As a wise man, though, once said with that fight, the first time was so nice. We had to do it twice, and we're going to get it once again, hopefully some point, probably later this year, I think is the plan. Obviously, they've got that date.
Well, September now is Crawford,
Booked in.
Canelo.
But yeah, they've got the date booked in theory for the stadium
Tottenham,
in
yeah.
21st of September.
21st of
That's going to
September.
be Fury AJ. Like, come on.
Ah, come on. That maybe.
We can only dream.
Hopefully we see it, but in the meantime, if you haven't already and you've made it this far, why haven't you subscribed to the channel or followed us on Spotify if you're on the audio versions? If you haven't already as well, jump over to YouTube and check out all of our interviews from the weekend at a local show down in Wales. Some great interviews with some great fighters, a little bit of shit stirring as usual.
No.
So check out all of those videos. And other than that, we'll see you all later in the week for who, Harry? Who's fighting on the weekend?
The Romford Bowl. Johnny Fisher.
Versus
Bosh!
Dave Allen.
the
The White Rhino.
Ooh.
So stick around for that later in the week.
But punches chance. Punches Chance Podcast.